For centuries, the Galactic Empire thrived on fear. Its fleets were so vast, so overwhelming, that most civilizations surrendered before a single shot was fired. Entire star systems bent their knees at the mere shadow of an Imperial dreadnought passing across their skies. It was not only weapons that maintained the Empire's rule, it was terror itself, carefully cultivated and mercilessly enforced. To the Empire, no species could stand as equals. The galaxy was divided neatly between rulers and subjects, conquerors and slaves, masters and the expendable. And in that arrogance, the Empire had overlooked one world: Earth. When Imperial scouts first detected humanity centuries earlier, they dismissed them as insignificant. Children playing in the void, the scouts' report had said. Early rockets and fragile satellites, laughable attempts at touching the stars. Humanity had been marked as a potential colony, nothing more. A minor note in the Empire's archives. But what the Empire had never understood, what it had never learned, was that humanity thrived in the shadows. For millennia, humans had known war. They had suffered famine, plague, fire, and endless cycles of rise and fall. And each time, they had learned. Each time they had adapted. Defeat to them was not final, it was a lesson. And every lesson was carved into their collective memory, turning weakness into strength. The Empire never paid attention to that slow growth. Not until it was too late. The spark came when the Empire made the mistake of issuing its ultimatum. Envoys delivered the decree, cloaked in arrogance. Your future lies under our banner. Bend the knee or be erased. Humanity gave no answer. At least, not in words. Instead, humanity worked. Factories buried in asteroids went silent on official channels, but deep within, they roared to life. Shipyards that once produced exploration vessels shifted to war production. Scientists abandoned peacetime pursuits and resurrected projects too dangerous to be tested before. Engines were refined, weapons recalibrated, strategies calculated. Humanity said nothing, but prepared everything. The Empire grew impatient. And like a careless predator, it struck too soon. A human colony, one of the smaller, outer ones, was obliterated. Thousands slaughtered. Cities burned. Families torn apart by fire and plasma. The Empire had meant it as a warning, a show of strength, nothing more. But for humanity, it was the last spark on dry tinder. The response was broadcast across the stars. A human voice, calm, grim, and resolute, echoed through Imperial space. We are not your slaves. You have spilled our blood. Now you will see how far we will go to spill yours. You have begun this war, but we will end it. In the Imperial Council chambers, laughter followed. Admirals smirked, politicians scoffed. They are fractured. Primitive. They will scatter at our approach. One commander sneered. Their threats are empty. But beneath the ridicule, unease began to stir. Reports trickled in from spies and sensors. Human fleets no longer matched recorded positions. Large-scale disappearances of vessels were noted. Supply lines had gone dark. And the strangest of all, science outposts, long thought irrelevant, were no longer transmitting at all. Something was happening in human space. Something vast. The Empire chose to ignore the warnings. After all, arrogance was the backbone of their rule. But humanity, patient, scarred, relentless humanity, had been waiting for this moment. The storm was coming. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire would face an enemy it could not comprehend. The warning signs were there, but the Empire did not take them seriously. Their fleets had crushed countless rebellions, and they thought humanity would be no different. When the first rumors of missing Imperial patrols came in, admirals dismissed them. A malfunction, pirates, or false intelligence, they said. But the truth was much darker. Human fleets were on the move. The meeting point was the space between Earth's territories and the Empire's controlled rim. It was a vast, empty void. No habitable planets, no stations, no trade routes, just silent space. The Empire thought it was the perfect place to confront humanity. What they did not know was that humans had chosen it as the battlefield long before. On the day the two sides met, space itself seemed to change. Imperial dreadnoughts emerged first, massive ships bristling with weapons. Behind them came cruisers, carriers, and endless lines of smaller escorts. To any observer, it was a terrifying display of strength. Their fleets stretched across the void like a wall of steel. Commanders watched with pride. This is more than enough to put humans in their place. But then came the humans. Their arrival was not slow. They did not creep out of hyperspace one by one. They arrived all at once, in formation, like a fist striking through the dark. Hundreds of ships appeared, engines blazing. Their hulls were newer, sharper, and more advanced than the Empire had predicted. What shocked the admirals most was their coordination. Every human ship moved as part of a larger whole, each protecting the other, each in exact position. For a moment, silence hung over both fleets. Then, without hesitation, humanity fired first. The void lit up. Energy beams, missiles, and railgun projectiles crossed the space between fleets in seconds. The Empire returned fire immediately, confident their size and numbers would crush resistance. But the first exchange of fire revealed the truth. Human weapons were not only powerful, they were precise. Every shot hit a weak point. Shields collapsed faster than expected. Engines failed. Entire Imperial escorts were torn apart before their commanders even understood what was happening. Inside the human fleet, there was no shouting or panic. Orders were calm, calculated. Decades of planning were now being tested in real combat. The admiral in command gave short instructions. Target their support vessels first. Cut their wings. Break their formation. The strategy worked. Imperial lines began to fracture. Smaller ships tried to maneuver out of the way, but human fighters were already waiting for them. Entire squadrons of interceptors struck with deadly speed, overwhelming Imperial defenses. The Empire tried to push forward with their dreadnoughts. They were massive, almost impossible to stop once they advanced. But humanity had prepared for that too. Instead of trying to overpower them directly, human ships scattered, drawing the dreadnoughts deeper into the trap. As soon as they crossed the set boundary, hidden human warships uncloaked, releasing weapons designed to overload shields with gravitational pulses. The dreadnoughts' defenses flickered, and in seconds precision strikes tore through their armor. One of the largest Imperial ships exploded in a chain reaction, fire consuming its hull. The shockwave rippled across space. For the first time in centuries, an Imperial flagship was destroyed in open battle. The psychological effect was immediate. Imperial captains who had entered the void with arrogance now felt a cold fear spreading through their crews. Messages flooded command channels. They are faster than predicted. They are inside our formations. We cannot hold them. Still, the admirals refused to retreat. Pride blinded them. They ordered all ships to push forward, to break humanity with sheer force. But every move they made had already been predicted. Humans had studied Imperial tactics for decades. Every formation, every maneuver, every counter-strategy, they knew them all. By the time the second wave of battle began, it was no longer a fair fight. Imperial cruisers tried to protect their carriers, but human bombers slipped through gaps in defense. Explosions filled the void. Fighters swarmed across the battlefield, disabling engines, destroying weapon systems, leaving Imperial ships drifting helplessly. The Empire realized too late that they had underestimated not just human weapons, but human minds. This was not blind aggression, it was a carefully constructed plan of war. As the battle dragged on, human communications broke through the jamming fields. Their message was simple and direct, heard by every Imperial soldier in the void. This is the price of your arrogance. We are not the weak ones you thought we were. You have attacked us. Now you will pay. Morale shattered. Fear replaced arrogance. The mighty Empire, for the first time in living memory, had been forced onto the defensive. And this was only the beginning. The first clash in the void had ended with heavy Imperial losses. Entire squadrons had been destroyed, and one of their largest dreadnoughts had been reduced to burning debris. It was a humiliation the Empire had never experienced before. Still, their leaders refused to admit defeat. They believed this was only a setback, not the beginning of something greater. But they were wrong. Humanity had only just begun. After the first battle, human fleets did not withdraw to rest or recover. They advanced. They pressed deeper into the contested space between Earth and the Empire. Every system along the way was carefully chosen. Humans avoided strongholds at first, targeting supply stations, relay hubs, and communication posts. Each strike was fast and decisive. By the time the Empire tried to respond, the humans were already gone, leaving behind wreckage and silence. The Empire's admirals grew frustrated. "They fight like shadows," one complained. "We cannot pin them down. Every time we move, they are already ahead of us." This was the core of humanity's plan, not just to fight, but to control the pace of war. They refused to meet the Empire where it was strong. Instead, they struck where the Empire was weakest, slicing apart the support structures that held their power together. It wasn't just physical damage, it was psychological. Each destroyed outpost sent a message. Each lost squadron reminded the galaxy that the Empire was no longer untouchable. Other civilizations, once too afraid to even whisper resistance, now watched closely. Rumors spread through the stars. "The humans are standing against them. The humans are winning." Inside human command, there was no celebration. The leaders knew the Empire still had overwhelming numbers. If they were careless, the war would turn quickly. Strategy meetings were constant. Every ship captain, every squadron commander followed strict orders. Discipline was absolute. Humanity could not afford mistakes. The Empire, on the other hand, began to crumble under its own pride. Rather than adapting to new tactics, admirals demanded bigger assaults, larger fleets, and direct confrontations. They thought sheer size would crush the humans. But with every massive fleet they sent, humanity found a way to break it apart piece by piece. The second major battle came near the edge of a nebula. The Empire had assembled a force large enough to wipe out 3-star systems. They expected the humans to scatter at the sight of it. Instead, the humans drew them into the clouds of the nebula, where sensors were unreliable. In the thick gas and swirling storms, Imperial formations collapsed. Visibility dropped, communications failed. Human ships moved through the fog with perfect coordination, guided by systems they had secretly developed for this kind of environment. One by one, Imperial cruisers were destroyed without ever seeing their attackers. "Enemy ships everywhere!" voices screamed over Imperial comms. "We can't lock onto them, our weapons won't track." The messages cut off as another explosion lit the clouds. The nebula became a graveyard of burning wreckage. By the time the Empire realized what had happened, another dreadnought was gone, and dozens of cruisers had been torn apart. Human losses were minimal. The lesson was clear: the Empire was not fighting savages, but masters of planning. In desperation, the Imperial Council ordered a full mobilization. Entire sectors were drained of ships to reinforce the war effort. Civilian worlds were left exposed as fleets were pulled to the front. But this only made matters worse. Rebellions began to stir in the shadows. With the Empire's grip weakened, oppressed species began to hope. For the first time in generations, the galaxy saw the possibility of change. Through it all, human broadcasts continued, always with the same calm and steady tone. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were divided. But we are united now. And we are coming for you." The Empire tried to jam the signals, but they spread through every channel, every captured station. Soldiers on the front lines heard them. Civilians in the core worlds heard them. Even the Emperor himself could not block them out. Every destroyed ship, every burning station carried the same message: humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to end the arrogance that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. And slowly, the balance began to tip. The void between Earth and the Empire was no longer empty space. It was a battlefield lit by fire, echoes of destruction, and the rising fear that the unstoppable Empire had finally met its match. The Empire could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity was not a nuisance to be brushed aside, they were a rising storm. Entire fleets had been lost, communication hubs destroyed, and supply lines shattered. Every effort to corner the humans had failed. The humiliation spread across the galaxy like wildfire. But instead of changing strategy, the Imperial Council doubled down. They assembled the largest force in their history, a combined fleet drawn from dozens of sectors. It was meant to be their answer, their show of absolute dominance. The fleet stretched across the void, dreadnoughts, cruisers, and carriers bristling with weapons. Billions of lives had been poured into its creation. The Council named it the Unbreakable Armada. Human intelligence networks intercepted the news before the fleet even left its staging grounds. Rather than fear, the message sparked determination. Humanity knew this was the moment everything would be decided. If they broke this armada, the Empire's illusion of control would shatter forever. Planning took weeks. Every move, every possible counter, every risk was discussed in detail. Human commanders knew they could not meet the Armada in open space and expect to win. But they also knew something the Empire did not: knowledge of the battlefield mattered more than sheer numbers. The chosen battleground was not near Earth, nor deep in Imperial space. It was in the middle ground, the sector of Calros Rift. A region of unstable gravity wells, shifting asteroid fields, and pockets of ion storms. For centuries, the Empire had avoided it, calling it a death trap for navigators. For humanity, it was the perfect weapon. When the Unbreakable Armada entered the rift, human fleets were already waiting. Hidden inside asteroid belts, cloaked near gravitational anomalies, humanity turned the environment into their ally. The battle began with sudden precision strikes. Small human squadrons darted out, hit Imperial ships, and retreated into the rift's storms. Imperial commanders ordered pursuit, but their massive formations could not maneuver easily. Cruisers collided with asteroids. Battleships drifted too close to gravity wells and were pulled apart. Every time the Empire tried to stabilize, another human strike tore through their lines. In the middle of the chaos, humanity unleashed their greatest weapon, the graviton lances, experimental cannons designed not to pierce armor but to destabilize energy shields by manipulating local gravity. When fired, the lances bent space itself around the target. Shields collapsed instantly, leaving Imperial dreadnoughts vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Within hours, the Unbreakable fleet began to fracture. Command chains broke down. Entire wings of ships were destroyed before receiving updated orders. Human broadcasts filled the comms again, calm and sharp. "This is not your galaxy anymore. This is not your empire anymore. This is the reckoning you never thought would come." On one Imperial dreadnought, panic spread as hull breaches multiplied. "We're losing containment!" shouted officers. The commander refused to retreat, screaming about Imperial honor, but the ship soon detonated, scattering fire across the rift. For the first time in centuries, Imperial soldiers began to surrender mid-battle. Escape pods drifted out, signals of surrender flashing as human ships pulled them in. Some refused, clinging to their orders, but their sacrifice changed nothing. The Armada was collapsing. On the Galactic communication network, the impossible became undeniable. Civilizations across the stars watched in secret as reports spread: "The Unbreakable Armada has been broken." The Council tried to suppress the truth, but even their censors could not stop it. Entire sectors erupted in unrest. Worlds under Imperial control began to rise, small rebellions igniting like sparks. If humans could challenge the Empire, others could too. But humanity did not slow down. They knew hesitation could give the Empire time to recover. Even as the wreckage of the rift still burned, human fleets pressed forward into the heart of Imperial space. Every world they liberated, every station they captured, added to their strength. The Empire's leaders held emergency meetings in the capital. Their voices were filled with panic, though none would admit it aloud. "This cannot be possible," one counselor muttered. "They are a young species. They should not be capable of this." But another voice spoke the truth no one wanted to hear. "They fight differently. They fight with purpose. And they are not afraid to burn everything if it means victory. That was the breaking point, not just of fleets and ships, but of belief. The Empire had built itself on the idea that resistance was impossible. Humanity had destroyed that myth. The galaxy would never see the Empire the same way again. The defeat of the unbreakable Armada left the Galactic Empire exposed in a way it had not been for thousands of years. Their fleets were shattered, their reputation broken, and their citizens restless. Humanity did not stop. They had no reason to. The war had gone too far. Too many had died. Too much had been taken. The human fleet advanced deeper into Imperial space, each battle more decisive than the last. Imperial garrisons tried to resist, but morale was gone. Soldiers abandoned posts, some entire stations surrendered without a fight. For the first time in history, the Empire looked weak. The capital world, Arcanis Prime, became the final target. A planet of shining towers, endless palaces, and military strongholds. It was the heart of imperial power, the seat of their council, and the symbol of their control over the galaxy. Human leaders knew this moment would decide everything. Destroying the capital would not just end a war, it would end the Empire itself. So, they prepared a strike unlike any before. The largest human fleet ever assembled gathered in the black void just outside Arcanis Prime. Carriers, destroyers, stealth ships, and weapon platforms all stood ready. The Empire threw everything left in defense. Defense satellites surrounded the planet. Massive shield generators pulsed across its surface. The remaining fleets circled in orbit like walls of steel. To them, the capital was untouchable. Then the human attack began. Instead of charging straight, they cut supply lines first, striking at outposts and communication relays. Imperial fleets orbiting Arcanis Prime soon found themselves blind, cut off, unable to coordinate. When confusion spread, the main human fleet surged in. The first wave of drones flooded the skies, overwhelming defenses. Swarms of missile pods followed, breaking through weakened shields. Human warships punched holes in the orbiting fleets, tearing apart destroyers and frigates with precision. On the ground, panic spread as alarms wailed. Citizens looked up to see the skies burning, the once proud defense fleet ripped apart piece by piece. The council ordered civilians to stay inside while they tried to rally their forces, but the people no longer listened. Many broadcasted messages to the galaxy, showing the Empire's weakness to all. Then came the final strike. Humanity had built a weapon during the Long War, something they had never dared to use until now. It was not a superlaser or a planet killer, but a network of orbital devices called the Silence Array. The array did not destroy matter. It destroyed communication. Once activated, no signal, no command, no cry for help could escape a system. It turned the capital into a prison of silence. When the Silence Array activated above Arcanis Prime, the Empire's heart went dark. Fleets could no longer receive orders. Ground bases could not coordinate. The Council could not beg for help. Humanity had cut the head from the beast. Then the bombardment began. For 3 days, human fleets rained fire across the surface of Arcanis Prime. Military bases vanished in firestorms. Government halls collapsed into rubble. Shield towers cracked and failed. The people of the capital watched their empire crumble in front of them, powerless to stop it. At the end of the 3rd day, human ships broadcast a single message across the ruined system. The Empire is finished. This galaxy belongs to its people now. Never again will one throne rule it. The Council tried one last desperate move, an escape through hidden tunnels beneath the capital. But they were captured before they could flee. Broadcasts showed them being led in chains before the galaxy. The image of their defeat spread faster than any speech or weapon ever could. When the news reached the far edges of the galaxy, the effect was immediate. Worlds under Imperial control declared independence. Species once enslaved rose up, throwing off their chains. The empire that had ruled for millennia was gone in weeks. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Not conquerors, not rulers, but breakers of chains. They did not declare themselves the new empire. They did not claim the capital as their throne. They simply dismantled the old order and left the galaxy free to decide its own fate. Still, every world remembered one truth: it was humanity who had done the impossible. Humanity who had stood against the strongest empire in history and won. Humanity who had turned silence into a weapon and crushed the heart of tyranny. The war was over. The empire was dead. And the galaxy would never forget the day humanity arrived for total destruction.